All right, welcome. This is the Mackie MobileMix. And while this compact battery-operated mixer has a lot of obvious features, there's a few things on this that you might not get if you already own it or if you were considering it. But first, I'm just going to start with a little demo of one of the interesting things that it does. It is an 8-channel mixer, so you can see that we've got 8 channels organized as 2 mono channels and 3 stereo channels. But then there is an additional input here called primary. And what is this all about? Well, I've got this connected to my iPad, and that way I can use it to play some music through it. This is not a headphone connection, but this is the output from an iPad through an adapter. Basically a headphone adapter, but I'll explain this adapter a little more later on. And I'll get some music playing here. Now, I'm on my benchtop setup, and you could hear that music probably through my mic a little bit. And the reason you hear it is because of this knob right here. This primary input is controlled by this knob. But check this out. I'm going to turn the main volume all the way down, and it's still playing. So that's one of the secrets of this board that I wanted to get to right away. You have a direct way to plug in a device, turn this knob here, and it will go right out to the outputs. So the main outputs left and right on the back, you can play directly to that. And one of the main applications for this is break music. If you're either busking, you're doing really any kind of a live performance, you can set it up where you can play break music through this with this single knob. And you can do it with the mains turned down. So if you get your guitars and everything else about your performance all set up, when you come to the break, just turn the main down, turn this up, and then connect this up to your iPhone or whatever playback device you have. There's also a convenient slot here to rest your phone if you want to. This slot's a bit narrow. It won't work with my phone with a case on it, but it will without the case, or it will work with the iPad. So if I put the iPad resting on here, you've got like a little playback setup that you can use to choose your background tracks or the songs you want to play during the break. All right, so let's continue to figure out what this MobileMix is all about. You can see the compact size. It's not particularly big. We'll put the dimensions up here on the screen so you can see that. And we're going to go over the inputs and outputs. But before I do that, I want to tell you one thing that this mixer isn't. It isn't a USB audio interface. One of the things that confused me when I saw this, I thought this was some type of a audio interface you connect via USB. Well, you can connect it via USB, but that USB is strictly for power. You can connect the USB on the back, and you can connect the USB connected battery on the inside to power it up on battery. But in the traditional sense, it's not a USB audio interface. Now, you can make it behave something like an audio interface if you go into a headset jack on your computer or your mobile device. I'm going to explain that in a little bit, but before I get into that, we're going to go over the features and the inputs and outputs of this little mixer. So the MobileMix is organized, as I said at the beginning, into 2 mono channels, and then we've got a stereo channel 3-4, and we've got another stereo channel 5-6. If you look at the back, that's on a mini jack. And then you've got a Bluetooth connection on 7-8, and that is dedicated for Bluetooth. You could see the light right here and the button for pairing. Then in the main section, you've got your headphone outs here with a headphone level. And this is kind of your primary way of listening to this board. But then you have 2 secondary mix levels. Now it says mix 1 and mix 2. Those are not unique mixes in the sense that they mix different things or monitors. It's just different levels. So you can use these to go out from the mix from this board to a streaming device, to PA speakers, or to headphones. So it's quite flexible. These are on 1/4-inch TRRS jacks in the back. You can plug in anything. They're not balanced, but you can get left and right outputs off of those. The blend control we'll come back to later. We have a very simple effects that are fairly effective as well that you can just flip through here. But before I get into more details on this, we're going to turn the unit over and take a look at the back. Now on the surface, this all looks pretty simple, not too hard to understand. If we start over here with the channels, we've got microphone inputs here on combi jacks. So you could plug in a 1/4-inch guitar type of plug into either of these. And actually, if you look at the top, there's buttons to flip a guitar. Actually, it looks like a star type guitar. Pretty fun there. And then the next one over, we've got left and right ins that if you plug into only channel 3, you'll get mono. If you plug into both, then you'll get stereo. So it will stereo mix to the outs. There's no pan or balance controls on anything. So if you plug these in, they'll be pan center. If you plug something in stereo, that stereo mix will come out the output, and you have no control over that. It's hardwired in this mixer. A lot of things about this mixer are to keep you out of trouble and to keep it simple. Now, if you look at 5.6, this one here is on a mini jack. You can also see the bidirectional nature of this. So this is where you can connect a phone if you wanted to do a mix minus to bring in somebody from a call into a podcast situation. You can do this here. You can do that through Bluetooth, and you can do it through that primary jack on the front as well. I'll talk about this more later because this is easy to say and not that easy to understand, but I think I've got it figured out. I'm going to explain also one of the unique things about this particular channel. So channel 5.6 is going in, but there's also a mono output coming out of there. And that is one way to feed out to a phone or to some sort of streaming. These are the mix jacks that I mentioned before. You can connect these to headphones, obviously, but you can also connect those to other things. When I use this in a kind of a karaoke setup, I use this to connect out to a single powered speaker, and that gave me control over it in a way that I could mix it to mono easily. But I'll talk to you more about my experience using this in that situation as well. This is pretty obvious. You've got left and right main outs on 1/4-inch TRRS, and then that brings you to the power switch, which is just a simple in-out green button on there. And then you've got a USB thing with the lightning on here at 5 volts, 1.2 amps, not for data. And actually it comes with this power adapter that has a USB plug on one end and power on the other. This is my own label, which I have to label these because they'll get all mixed up here. And so it's got a standard adapter for that. And I mentioned that you can put a battery pack, basically a power brick inside this unit. And this, in my experience, will charge that if you have the right combination of battery, essentially. And there is a specific battery that I would recommend. I'm going to explain that to you later, so stay tuned for that. So that is the back panel of the unit. You'll see that this thing is mostly a plastic construction, and that makes it fairly lightweight, apart from the fact that I've got a power brick inside this. I powered this during my testing for about 5 hours, and it stayed working for 5 hours before I needed to recharge that battery. So let's take a look. This is the kind of party trick of the MobileMix, is that inside here, I've got a power bank. Now this doesn't come with it, but as I mentioned, Mackie did send me this unit for evaluation. So I didn't pay for it, but it's otherwise not sponsored. But they did send me this battery as an example of one that will work. It needs to be fairly thin, and there are specs that come with the unit. It comes with this green cable. It has USB-A on one side and USB-C on the other side. And this jack here is really the same thing as this one here. So when we connect up the power bank in here, it gives you a little graphic saying, tuck that cable back in here. And then this will go in here, and you can close that And that way you can use a generic battery in here without having to buy a specific custom battery. With that said, I would recommend finding this exact battery because this works well, and it's a 1000 milliamp hour battery from this company, TRRS. And you can look this up and find this on eBay, which I did. You can buy a 2-pack of these exact batteries, and it cost me $17 for 2 of them. I would suggest just getting this 2-pack of TRRS power bank batteries, and you will have no problem fitting it in here. Now, I have a bigger one from Anker that's more fat, and it didn't work in here correctly because I couldn't close the door. It's like a IQ version that has high output current. It did work plugged in like this. It will power the unit, but through its built-in cable, it did not work. So definitely test this stuff before you go to a gig. Take a spare battery. This is a very low-cost add-on. And you'll also see that there is a little piece of foam in here that is designed to keep the battery somewhat stable. This battery is a little bit loose, but included with the stuff that comes with the MobileMix are these pieces of 3M adhesive foam, and they're of a couple of different thicknesses. So you can stick this in here, and this probably would be better if I would stick these in here because it would push down on here more. So I might do that a bit later on, but that is their solution to keeping your battery pack from jostling around inside the unit. So with that, I think we've taken a look at the physical aspects of this. I guess there's one more thing that's common with all modern Mackie mixers is they put a little indent on the side to make it easy to grab. If you look at the design of this, it is got, kind of an angle, and there's some space back in here. There isn't really any sort of stand mount on this, so you would need to mount this on some kind of a shelf if you want to put it on your speaker stand or on your microphone stand. But anyway, it's a nice compact mixer. At the price, it serves multiple functions for live sound, and we'll get into that in a little bit more, but it works a lot like a field mixer, and yet compared to a typical field mixer, it's quite inexpensive. All right, so we'll get back with a few more details on this mixer in a moment. All right, I'm going to quickly go over the channel controls, but before I do that, I want to show you the other things that are included with the MobileMix. One is this quick start guide, which has a few hookup diagrams and just a very little bit of text. And this is not the real guide to this. I would strongly recommend downloading the real manual, which is actually quite good and has a little bit of typical Mackie humor in it. And then, I don't know if this will help you, but this kind of thing helps me. This is a signal flow diagram. You can see that it's a bit tattered when I studied it for this video, but this is really helpful to understand exactly how this thing works. And this is in the real manual that you can download from the site. Another thing that is included is a cable like this. This is a TRRS, meaning it's got 4 conductors on it, to TRRS. And this is what you're going to need to connect up to phones and devices through this port for bi-directional communication and the mix minus capability. So it does include one of these, but you could connect 2 devices to this, and so you would need to have your own thing like this. Now, this is an 8-channel mixer. Essentially, it's got 3 stereo channels here, and it's got the 2 input channels that are mono that will work with mics. Now, they're real clean. I thought that this sounded really, really good in my testing. And it does not have that much gain, however. So if you're going to have an SM7B or a mic that needs a lot of high gain, this has 50 dB of gain on this channel. It was enough for all my common mics, SM57 and every other mic that I tried on it. I don't have an SM7B, but if you did, you'd need, and you wanted to use it with this, you'd need a booster. A lot of stuff that's very typical to what we see on other mixers and other Mackie mixers. This button to engage if you're going to use this with a guitar. You've got this low cut, which was actually really effective. This is set at 100, but in combination with this simple EQ at 12 kHz and 80 kHz, I could get a pretty good voiceover sound by giving it a little bit of top end here and a little bit of boost, but then engage this low pass here. And the combination of those sounded really quite good. So very effective section, but super simple. And then the only other control you've got in here besides the level is your effects send. So that says FX. You turn in the amount of effects you want. There is a center detent on most of these, not on the input gain. So you can turn this up and it will go into the effects engine, which you can choose between plate, hall, and this reverb delay. And I tried all of these in karaoke, and depending on the song, I would say the plate sounds the most natural, but if you want that, get that kind of over the top effect, this also works, but that's really a spring reverb. So that does work well with guitars as well. But I like that they kept it simple. It is very, very simple. Your effects level is set here, and that is then mixed in. Channel 2 works exactly the same way. And then channel 3, 4, which is good for connecting a keyboard or a guitar processor or something else in mono through a line level input. It's got the same EQ on it. And it also has a effects send right here and a level control. So that's your first 4 channels. Very straightforward if you're running sound while singing and you've got a keyboard coming in here, you've got your acoustic guitar coupled here and your vocal mic here, or maybe 2 vocal mics and some instrument coupled in here. That's really a really nice setup. Add a little effects to it as well. Now 5.6 on the back is that mini jack. You could use this as playback for backing tracks or anything else you want to bring in. You could bring in a groove box of some sort on that mini jack as well. And as an input, it's going to work just like any other stereo line level input. It's just that it's on a mini jack. There is a output to it from the mix of this board, and that is mix minus. It's actually a completely separate thing, even though it's going down the same cable. One signal is going back out through that mini jack if you have a TRRS cable connected, and that will be the mix of everything except this channel and except for effects. It's just really interesting that on this channel, effects are not sent back out. It goes out dry. Not sure why that is, but if you had a remote, you're patching in a remote caller who is listening to it and you really don't want to have those effects on there, this is the channel to use for that on the back. And then Bluetooth is a very simple Bluetooth. This will appear as MobileMix to your mobile device. If you want to pair, you can hold this down for a little while. It will go into the pairing mode like that, and then you'll find it on your device and you can easily pair to it. And here's the level for that. Now, in the beginning, I covered most of these other features. We have the mix out level. So basically, whatever you set up on these gain controls here, then you can also mix on these here. And then the main out is mixed on the green knob here. This really controls only the left and right TRRS connections on the back. It's not a pre-gain for any of the other things going out. So all of your mixes kind of separately, you're just sending directly to that from the mixer part of it. This is your main output level for your speaker. This main level will also show and indicate here for your gain. And that is one of the things I would say that gain staging on this unit is a little bit tricky. And typically you're going to gain stage by putting this at unity. If you could turn your speakers off, you could put this at unity, put this at unity, and then adjust this until you see signal here. And this will go green, green, and then yellow and red. And as long as you keep it in the green with the occasional excursion into yellow, you'll have your gain set correctly. I guess a lesson with this board is to test your setup regardless of what you're going to do with it, because you can use it as a centerpiece for fairly complicated or sophisticated streaming setups to multiple platforms, sources, remote callers, and things like that. And you're going to set your level to the remote callers by however you adjust these knobs. So this does not affect that. And when I first started looking at this unit, I thought it did, but that is not how this is implemented. Blend control I'll get back to. I will tell you that blend control is strictly for what you hear from this headphone jack. So if you're twisting on that and wondering, what does this thing do? And I've seen other reviewers look at this unit and not really understand what this does. Well, I have figured that piece of it out, and I'll explain that just in a few minutes. On here, we've got 48 volt phantom power, which works great. I would suggest connect all your devices with phantom power off, turn the board on, and then turn your phantom power on to avoid unnecessary pops. And phantom power goes to these two channels. Now, this primary input is in parallel. It is not part of the overall mix that is being controlled by this knob right here. It is controlled by this level right here. So whatever you plug in here, you control that level right here. And you have two choices for that: phone camera level and line level. So typically if you're connecting a phone, you're going to be better off here. And if you connect some other kind of device into here, like some kind of tape deck or even a groove box or some other kind of player, you would leave that out. The difference is pretty subtle. There is a little bit of padding there, but it's not even all that noticeable. Now, one thing not to be confused about this, because one application of this is that you could use this as a hub for a photo or a video shoot, and then use this to take your high quality mics, route them out to two cameras, or route it out to a phone. And a camera for its mic inputs usually have something like this. It's TRRS. And in TRRS, the input to the camera is on this pin, and it won't work without an adapter. So you would need a Rode converter or something similar to that if you want to go directly into your camera off of this thing. This button does not reconfigure that jack to use this type of connector. So I researched that, and that is how that aspect is. All right, so let's talk about this blend control. This allows you to choose from this headphone jack what you're going to hear between channels 1 through 8 and the primary input on here. So that is kind of a unique thing. It does not affect what the audience hears at all. It's strictly what you're going to hear when you're queuing this up. So you can listen to your inputs here, or you can listen to the primary coming in here. And you can do that with this turned down. So if you wanted to, like listen to some of the, maybe a backing track here and a different track you're queuing up here, this allows you to go back and forth between those two sources. So it might be useful if you're using this as a miniature DJ rig for playing music at a dance, or maybe to prepare something if you're using it as a karaoke kind of a center unit. This is somewhat confusing, and definitely experiment with this if you decide to get one of these units in. But I believe that this is designed for certain use cases where a lot of the time you're going to want to leave this set to listen to your basically your 1 through 8 channels if you're connected here. You always have the option to connect your headphones to one of these on the back, and it's basically going to be the same thing you're hearing if you've got this set to 1 through 8 here. All right, so we're going to take a closer look at the construction of the MobileMix. Now, it appears to be mostly plastic, and the whole front panel appears to be a kind of a label that's stuck to this plastic chassis. And when we turn it over, we've got the battery compartment. So I'm going to start by removing the battery. If we look at the back panel, this part of it is metal. So we've got a formed metal, and then these things are attached to it. Notice that there's no nuts on any of these things to hold them in like you find on a lot of mixers. And then in order to get it apart, I feel like there's possibly some screws under here, and then down in here there might be some screws. So I'm going to just see if I can peel these feet. Yeah, there's a screw under there. I'm assuming this is some sort of plug that if we can get in there, that there's probably a screw in behind there. And certainly would not recommend doing this at home because you could damage it. And you can see there's a plug here with an angled top, and we're going to have the same thing here on the other side. And now we should be able to get in here with the screwdriver and remove the back. So this is a 100% plastic back panel here. And then if we look further in here, we can see that we have the back metal plate is formed over here. So the entire circuit board here is screwed in at this point. And I'm assuming you would probably need to pull off all of the knobs in order to pull this free. I believe that these kinds of configurations here are the actual back side of the knobs. So the pots are soldered in through hole onto this board. So this board is really all of the rest of it. And then up here we've got the back plate, and that's loose on some ribbon cables. I'm not going to get too much into it, but it's pretty interesting that here is the USB-C adapter for the battery. As it comes in through the hole on here, it's just sticking out here on this assembly, and it's right behind the power switch. So it's just back to back in a little assembly here. You've got this one and this one are right opposite each other. Very, very interesting the way that's done. So the power is then coming in here off this little assembly here is the power coming into the unit. And it says 5 volts power. There is a little module here, and I don't know what that module is related to, but I'm assuming that's probably related to Bluetooth because it's right adjacent to the Bluetooth button. So this is probably the radio part for the Bluetooth. And then all of the rest of it is on this chip, which I'll take a look at a little bit later. And then your input-output jacks are here. There's a couple of capacitors over here, probably something related to filtering power. But it is overall, this is plastic construction. So this is a low-cost construction. All surface mount components for the actual mixer circuitry here. And then the pots are on the other side. I suppose if I were to pull that free and look at it, there may be some other resistors and other components soldered to the other side, but I can't see them from here. Anyway, I would say it's clean construction. I'm not sure what holds all the switches and stuff to the back panel, but we see that there are screws here that hold these combi connectors on. So that would give that a little bit more mechanical support when you're plugging it in and out. But otherwise, these are plugged in here, and I see a big screw going through here, but it doesn't appear, unless there's some stud welded to the other side of this metal plate. There might be studs that are actually welded onto the back plate that these screws, and there's other support screws going back in there. I don't get any indication that it's not sturdy. It definitely feels sturdy, and there's a little guide here to hold that board. So I see 3 circuit boards here, and so that gives you an idea of the construction of this. It's lightweight because it's made of plastic. I wonder if this is a conductive plastic that's also providing some shielding, and maybe we'll give that a test a little bit later on. So that's inside the MobileMix, and that should give you a good idea about how this is put together. All right, I want to talk about the mix-minus features of this board and the TRRS connections. I'm going to just explain the TRRS connection and the fact that to your phone or your remote device or your computer, this mixer appears to that other unit like a headset headphones. With headset headphones, you've got a microphone here that is sending a signal back out this wire, and then a stereo mix is being sent back up to the speakers that make up the headphone ear cups. So on a headset, the way the signals work on here is that the tip is the left ear, the ring is the right ear, this is ground, and then this is the microphone. So relative to the headphones, the microphone cable's coming out of here, and then the left and right signal is going back into this cable to play back, and then they share the ground wire here. And interestingly enough, at least to me, is this mic signal also contains a small voltage that is used to power up these type of electret microphones. Now, you don't need to know that related to this mixer. It does not support this kind of headset. But if you think about it, when I plug this in here or the other one that's on the back, it's going to form the exact same kind of signal. So from your phone, you're going to be getting left and right audio, and then to your phone, you're going to be sending back a mix from this board. And this is how these TRRS connections work related to this type of application. So the other thing you'll need to understand about this is to get this into the phone, unless your phone or your computer has a jack like this. Most computers do, but most modern iOS devices don't. Then you need a device like this. And this is a adapter. This is a TRRS adapter that does that bidirectional function. So if you put this on here, then you have created a way to connect this to the computer. And also interesting, in case you never really thought about this, is that this little device here, this is the Apple one, is an audio interface. This is a miniaturized audio interface, and the circuitry for it is in here. It's a 24-bit device that does 44.1 and 48K sample rates. It's a 1x2 audio interface through this thing. Pretty interesting, pretty amazing. So if you want to use this thing as an audio interface, you can do this, plug this into your computer, this part, and it will appear as a 2-out, 1-in audio interface. Now, if you want something that's a little bit better than this Apple one, and also there's many of these things on the market that are not bidirectional, like this one here is a DAC. It's strictly for headphones. But this one here from StarTech, and StarTech makes pretty good stuff, and I typically use a lot of these for the IT aspects of my setup in the studio. This one from StarTech does the same thing as the Apple, but it does higher sample rates. So it goes way up in the sample rates. The price, I think, is less. None of these things are particularly expensive. So this is a really good option if you want another way to adapt this. Now, I'll say one more thing about this before we move on, is that if you just want to use the headphone jack that exists on your computer, or say you have a Thunderbolt dock like the CalDigit, then you can just plug this in here and then plug this into that type of headset jack. And then you can use this as an audio interface. So your playback level would be here, and then it will mix out from here, the full mix in mono back out to your computer. And I tried it that way, and it works really well. You just plug this in and go into voice memo, and you can record. And so this is a lot of details on all of this stuff. If you have this board or you're considering this board, these details are important if you want to use it for those kinds of applications. Now, here's another really interesting thing, and you can learn it from this page, or I learned it from testing, is that the output, the mono output from this has the effects bus on it. So if you're mixing in effects, you'll hear it here. The output from Bluetooth has the effects. The output on this channel does not, and it shows up on the diagram that it is actually indeed not connected to the effects bus for this channel. I don't know why, but that's how it is, and it's good to know if you're working with it. And then a little bit about the Bluetooth channel. It works the same. It basically, from your phone, Bluetooth is going to be sending a 2-channel stereo stream of left and right into this mixer and into this knob, and then it will send out everything from the mixer up except for channel 7/8 back into the phone. And so it works exactly the same as connecting up one of these, but it's over Bluetooth. And the quality is not quite as good, and it does have a little latency. So if you want a good low latency connection, then you're better to use this with one of these adapters or otherwise directly into your device. So while it's not a USB audio interface, it has many uses. It's kind of a Swiss Army knife of mobile mixers. And if it's what you need, you're going to really appreciate it. If it's not, maybe it's not for you. But I have found it's way more useful and a lot more fun than I was expecting. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing and check out this video right here next on the channel.